right, everybody, welcome to Canberra Youth Live for Friday, the 24th of April. Good to see you guys. How are we all doing? Thumbs up if you're doing well. Excellent. Wave your arms like this if you're not doing well.
Oh, I'm doing well though.
Just because like that makes you feel better. So if you're not doing well and you do this.
Yeah, you're right. I feel great.
Make you feel better. That's right. That's right indeed. Cool. Hey, it's great to see you guys. We've got a few things jammed in today. We've got some games lined up. We are going to show you our dance compilation video that we've been inviting everyone to be part of.
I am so excited to see that. I have been waiting for weeks to do this dance comp, and it's actually happened, and I'm so excited to see the final result.
Shelby is really happy with it.
I love dancing.
So it'd be great to see how that goes. We'll announce the winner of that, and we'll put some points up for that. There's points on offer tonight as well with our games. So make sure you're in for that. But to start with, should we start with the competition?
Let's start. Let's do it. I want to see it.
Cool. All right. So the competition, if you weren't aware, we did a competition where we asked you to dance to that "Wow, you could really dance" song. Because it's a big craze at the moment. People are dancing to it, and we've just edited. All these people sent in entries. It was great. Some people sent in really long ones, some people sent short ones, and we've just sort of like taken snippets of all of them, put them into a 1-minute video, and we'd love to share that. Are you guys ready to see that? Yeah, I see people who were in it just freaking out.
I'm pretty sure everyone would have like squealed with excitement if you weren't muted. I know.
Yeah,
I know. You're excited. I know.
All right, I'm going to share this with you guys. Excellent. So that, if you didn't notice, there was a lot of people in there. I think we had 7 or 8 different people represented.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. This was us dancing to it earlier. That's it again. Here we go. Here's what we're going to say is people who are in colours all got points for this. And we decided that we liked Lucy's video the best. So Lucy, well done. You get the full points this week for your video.
Awesome.
It was really great. But well done to Emily and Caitlin, and Vimbiso and Arwen and Benji and Kira, who also featured in that video. And you'll also notice Steph has shot to the top of the leaders leaderboard because she was the only leader who entered, which is
Even
great.
if others entered, Steph, yours was awesome. You still would have won.
Steph's was pretty good. And we gave ourselves some points because we played along as well. So now we're on 2.
Is that bad that judges get points? I don't think that's bad.
No,
I want points. I feel left out.
It's all good. Hey, which is all fun. So next week we'll run another competition. This one will be a little less daunting. Next week we're going to ask you to show your ugly face. We want to see your ugliest faces. So if you tag us or send us a photo of yourself making the most ugly face possible, we will choose the best ugly face. The best face that looks ugly, the best, how do I say this without embarrassing everyone and making them all sound like
So this isn't about who's the ugliest, this is about the ugliest face you can pull.
Yes.
Like, okay, all right,
Yes.
I get it now. All right, so I'm going to make an ugly face. All right.
So pull the best face you can. We will judge who has the best face. Send it to us, DM it to us, tag us on Instagram. Any of those options are fine, and we will collect them all, put them all together, and we will see them next week. All those people in the chats just saying, hey, that just looked normal. That's rude. Cool.
And just to clarify, guys, as always, that competition will start on Monday. We're just giving you a little bit of heads up now. So it will start on Monday. We'll post it on Monday like always. And then entries have to be in by Thursday midnight.
Yes. We are starting a new series today. If you're normally with us at Youth, we do a series at least once a month. And this series is called Choose Your Own Adventure. And we called it that because it's about the journey you go on in life and how that can be an adventure with God. Hey, I want you to think about all the kinds of things that you might like doing with your friends. I mean, like talking or hanging out or listening to music, watching movies, riding bikes, playing sport, going for walks, going to the shops, reading books. I already said that, didn't I? Anyway, road trips. Going to the beach, talking for hours. Like that's just a short list of things that you might like to do with your friends, right? I know when I hang out with my friends, there's a million different sorts of things that we might do. We might play board games at one time, or we might actually go to the movies another time, or we might then play something else. Like, every time we hang out, something different happens, and there's a lot of variety that goes on. And I'm guessing you've done all these things and probably a whole lot more with your friends when you've hung out with them yourselves. But what if you were only allowed to do just one thing on that list? Just one. Like imagine that every day, whenever you see your friends, you can only do one activity, and you decide, you know what, I like playing soccer. And so you decide, I'm going to play soccer every day with my friends. And even if they don't like soccer, they all have to play soccer with you. And that's what you do every time you see your friends. It's the only thing you can ever do. That kind of is going to get a bit boring after a while, right? Only playing soccer with them. And then maybe even once you move into that, you might have friends that don't like playing soccer. You might have friends that are in wheelchairs and they can't play soccer. That's not really going to go down well, is it? Now imagine I'm the one who gets to decide what everyone does with their friends. What if I get to choose? What if I say, the only way we can interact with friends, everyone in the whole world, is just listening to music. And that's the only way we're ever going to connect with friends, because I said so. So that means no hanging out for coffee. That means no going to the beach, no going for walks. The only way you interact with your friends is listening to music, because I said so. That's not fun, is it? Right? Who thinks that's a good idea? No one? Excellent. I think that's a bad idea as well. Cool. But, you know, of course, there's just no one way to spend time with friends. And there's no one person dictating how you spend your time with your friends. That's just not how it works. We all have different friends. We're all different people, and we all hang out in different ways with our friends. The way I hang out with my friends is different to the way you're going to hang out with your friends. And it's variety. It keeps things from being boring, keeps it fresh, keeps the friendships alive. And sometimes, yeah, there will be regular stuff, normal stuff that happens, stuff that we would do like almost monotonously, but there's also going to be big things as well, big moments that happen in our friendships that make lasting memories and significant parts of those friendships. And for the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about friendships and relationships, but specifically with God, and how our friendship with God is going to be different to other people's friendships with God, because we are all made individually. And so we're going to be doing this series called Choose Your Own Adventure, because I think that friendship with God, that journey of getting to know Jesus and following him, it's not just a formulaic approach and not just a one-way-fits-all approach. It's an adventure. It's a lifelong journey. It's something that's going to be quite exciting for the rest of your life if you let it be. And you might be thinking, when the friendship stuff, you know, yeah, hanging with my friends is easy. I see them at school. We hang out every day. We go to each other's houses. We go down to the shops. We hang out there. That's really easy. How do I actually do a friendship with God? Ben, you're talking about a friendship with God. How does that happen? I mean, I can't touch him. Like, I can't find him. God's everywhere, but I can't touch him. How do I actually have a friendship with God? And that's where the fun comes into it, because we all have different ways of spending time with God, even though he's not physically like a physical being that we can grab and touch and talk to face like this. So it asks us the question, how do we spend time with God? If God isn't a physical being that we can go and hang out down with at the beach or at the shops or play video games with, how do we actually hang out with God? There are so many ways. But usually if I was to put that question out, if we were actually in the youth room right now and I said, let's make a whiteboard up, I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch of ideas going up, like going to church or praying or reading the Bible. And those ones are normal and those ones are good and those are fundamental, but there are so many more as well. Like, you know how when you go to hang out with your friends, there are so many different ways of doing that. There's also so many different ways of connecting with God, not just praying, not just reading the Bible, not just going to church. You can have variety with your friendship with God. The key here is finding what works best for you. Because I can tell you what works for me, but that's not going to help you if you're different to me. The key is finding what works for you. If we look through the Bible, it is full of so many stories of how different people connected with God, right? You can read through all the different characters, the way they interacted with God, the way God encouraged people, the way God brought people from a place of, hey, I'm no good at anything, to leading entire nations. God did so much miraculous stuff and so much incredible stuff in changing people's lives. But we're going to look at one person today. And that one person, because it's always the answer, is Jesus. Jesus is always the best model and example to look for. And we're going to look at how Jesus connected with God. Wait, wasn't Jesus God already? What haven't you been saying recently, Ben? Jesus was fully human and fully God? Yes, Jesus was God. So it's not talking to himself. He was both human and divine. And he was modeling to us how he can connect with the Father and how we should do that as well. And so we look to Jesus to see how that example of how we can be in a friendship and a relationship with God can work. Tonight, I want to just have a look at one verse, just one. It's in Luke chapter 5. If you have a Bible and want to follow along, you can open up to Luke chapter 5. But if you look at Luke chapter 5, it's a period in Jesus' life where things were going really, really busy. I mean, I wrote down all the things he was doing just in chapter 5, like just one little bit of the book of Luke. He's out there calling his first disciples. Then he goes around, he starts healing people with leprosy. Then he's healing a paralyzed man. Then he's having dinner with people and talking to tax collectors, calling more people to be his disciples. getting out there, preaching and teaching, having debates about what fasting looks like. That's a lot of stuff to happen just in one chapter of the Bible. And Jesus is doing all that. He's getting pretty busy. He's got people all around him. And in the midst of all that, Luke 5, verse 16 just says this. It says, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. I mean, in the midst of all the busyness that was going on for him, Jesus took time to stop and spend time with God. And the Gospels say that he did this pretty often. I've got a bunch of verses that I've passed on to your leaders. I think there was about 7 or 8 of them that just highlight little bits throughout the Gospels where it says, Jesus stepped aside and prayed. Jesus took all this time to go and spend time with God. Jesus decided to go and be alone for a while. And you can think that's something Jesus probably needed, because he had people all around him all the time. He had crowds following him. He had people just coming after him saying, Jesus, I heard you heal that other guy of leprosy. Can you heal me? Jesus, I heard that you're teaching this amazing stuff. Can you tell me some stuff as well? There's just people coming after him all the time. He needed to step aside and be alone just for a little while so he could recharge and connect with God. And if you looked at those collection of verses that I gave your leaders, they might share them with you. You find Jesus sometimes taking time at the start of the day. Sometimes he goes to the end of the day. Sometimes it's just in the middle of what he's doing. He says, guys, I need a break. And he runs off and does his own thing. But what he did was he spent time with God, with himself, alone. And he even did that in front of his disciples to say, guys, this is how you should do it as well. So that's an example for us to follow, this idea of intentionally taking time to spend time with God. So that's the first thing. We need to be intentional about actually wanting to spend time connecting with God. And so I was going through this and going, so is that it? We have to make time with God. Does that mean I always have to run away and be silent and be alone? If that was the only way to ever be with God, to just be silent and alone, I'd be stuffed, because that doesn't work for me very well. That's the sort of thing that I do when I'm really intentionally saying I want to spend this time with Jesus and do the alone thing. But for me to just naturally wake up and go, yeah, alone time now, that's hard for me. And my personality, that's not how I operate. So I'd be getting pretty bored if that was the only way that we could ever connect with God. And I'm so thankful that that's just one way I connect with God. There's a few. And if I understand as well, like for others, that is the perfect way to connect with God. And that's awesome if that's you. That's just not me. But if we think about Jesus, he spent a lot of time in silence, being alone, because he had to get away from the crowds. So that worked for him. He needed to get away and be alone because he was so in your face with people all the time. And we do need those silent and alone times with God, because those are some of the fundamental times when we can actually have God speak to us clearly and directly. It's a time we can pour our hearts out to God. But if that's not something that works for you every single time, then maybe we have to find some other ways as well, because we're all wired differently. We're all going to be engaging differently, and we find different things to be what works for us. For example, me, I love music. I love nothing more than getting my guitar out and playing and singing to God, or jumping in the car, turning up worship music and just singing along as I'm driving to work or driving to wherever. Sometimes I just take car rides just to be with God as I turn on the worship music. But I also sometimes like to sit down with my Bible and to have a devotional guide next to me and say, God, would you speak to me this time? What do you have to say to me in your word right now? And I read and I see what the devotion says and try and see what God is saying to me. And so often it feels like God is going, I wrote this like 5 years ago with this guy for you to read right now. And it's just like, wow, that was what I needed right in this moment. Other times, I don't do this one often, but sometimes I like to pull things apart. Like I will take a passage of scripture and I'll just research the crap out of it, you know. I said crap. I said it again. But I'll research that passage. So I'll take the passage and I'll go, okay, what do the commentators say about this? What does research say about this? What was going on at the time? What is the context of the history around this passage? What was God doing in amongst the people at the time? Like what was going on in a wider context? It just helps me to understand, hey, this passage I'm reading, there's surely some stuff that goes around it that helps me understand it deeper. Sometimes I do that. There's so many different ways I connect with God, and that's just 3 of them. Sometimes, very rarely, I do that. But Shelby, are you online at the moment?
I am online.
I'm just going to ask a couple of different leaders. How did they like to connect with God? So, Shelby, how did you connect with God?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways, but one of the ways that I do is go for walks with headphones and listen to the Bible on audiobook. For me, that's just something that I just can get out into nature, I can get fresh air, and I can listen to God's word.
Cool. Thanks, Shelby, for that. Georgia, would you like to share with us just a way or two that you like to connect with God?
Yeah, for me, similar, I connect in a lot of different ways, but one of the ways that I find myself always being drawn back to is being creative with God. So whether that's like taking a bit of scripture or asking God a question like, God, what do you want to say right now? And being creative with him, whether that's in painting or in singing, or as embarrassing as it is, in my room just dancing and asking God, show me your love in this moment. Show me a deeper understanding of your scripture whilst we be creative. And that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, Georgia. One more. Hey, Bo. Bo, would you like to share with us just some ways you connect with God and how that works for you?
Yeah, so it's similar to Shelby. I do listen to the Bible a lot. I listen to the Streetlights Bible because they kind of put some music underneath it, so it's not just this old man droning on and on with the Bible, but I also just do stuff physically. So I'll go build stuff. Like I'll have my noise cancelling kind of earmuffs on, and then I have my headphones inside them, and I'll just have this playing in the background. Either plays through, or if I want to listen to a particular one, I'll put it on repeat and kind of really just listen to it over and over and see if anything stands out over and over. And then maybe after that, I'll go and physically read if something stood out. Yeah, that's one way that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, guys. So as you can see, all those different leaders all connect with God in slightly different ways. There was some overlap between them, but some of them, we all talk to God in different ways, and we all hear from God in different ways. And I think that's amazing. I mean, Jesus gave us the example that we need to intentionally spend time chasing after God, but he gave us freedom to do that in whatever way works for us. So Bo says how he likes to listen to the Bible, use the Streetlights app as he's working. That's awesome. And then Georgia says she wants to dance in her bedroom. Two very different things, but they both work. They both work for them to connect with God. And I love that. That is so awesome. I mean, you don't have to connect with God the way I do. You don't have to connect with God the way that your parents do. You don't have to connect in the way that the other leaders do. You don't have to connect with God the way that your sister does. You need to find the way that you can connect with God. Because if you can find the way you connect with God, then you will connect with God. Kind of makes sense, right? So that's what I wanted to get you to try and understand. And what really helps you connect with God right now, that might even change in a couple of years. Like you might be right now someone who loves to listen to things, and maybe in a couple of years you decide you want to be someone who reads things. That's okay too. That your life can change. Just like your taste buds change, your preferences might change as well, and that's okay as well. There is no one way to connect with God, because connecting with God, that journey of faith, is an adventure. Hence why we're doing this Choose Your Own Adventure. It's so much more of an adventure than it is a formula. Like if you could imagine, if the only way we could ever connect with God is you have to wake up at 6:00 a.m. and then you have to spend 4 minutes in prayer, and at 6:04 you have to read the Bible for 6 minutes, and then at 6:10 you have to spend 2 minutes doing jumping jacks, and then at 6:12 you have to then sing to God a liturgy. If that was the formula for the only way you can connect with God, I'd be bored. I would not be waking up at 6:00 every day. I like the days I get to sleep in. It's not a formula, because that gets boring. It's an adventure, because we get to actually connect with God in ways that engage us and get us interested, which is awesome. Here, I don't know if you can see well, but here's a picture of a famous mountain in Yosemite National Park in California. It's called the Half Dome. You might recognize it if you use the default background on your Apple Mac every so often. The year it was Yosemite was this picture of a mountain in Yosemite National Park. The reason I'm showing you this photograph is because it is an amazing mountain that so many people like to go and look at, to photograph. When the sun is setting just right, it looks amazing. You get all sorts of different colors on it. But the interesting thing is, it was only relatively recently that people started climbing this mountain. You see, even as recent as the late 1800s, about 1880, 1890, people still thought it was impossible to climb this mountain. But someone eventually managed to climb and make their way to the top. And once someone got to the top, other people started following climbing as well. And now there's thousands of people who climb that mountain every year. And it's not like there is just one single path to the top. Like there is a path that many people take, but there are so many new paths being found all the time to the top of this mountain. There's not just one way to get there. I mean, people are even trying to climb the face of the mountain to get up to the top. That mountain is so diverse that people can take all sorts of ways to get there. They're not stuck on one path. They can get there in all sorts of different ways. And the idea of spending time with God might sound hard. Like for so many years, people thought that spending time climbing this mountain was going to be useless and they couldn't achieve anything with it. Until eventually someone tried, persevered, and got to the top. And now it just seems easy for people to climb this mountain by comparison. I don't know if I'd make it, but it might seem easy. Same thing when we start trying to spend time with God. It might seem like it's a little bit hard at first. It might seem like you're never going to make it to the top of the mountain, but eventually you'll start finding a beaten track that works for you. And then eventually you might start a new track, but you'll get to that top. So here's what I want you to think about tonight as we head off into our groups and start talking and discussing. I want you to think about this, that a relationship with God is not just about finding a magic formula, but it's about finding your own way to connect with God. Spending time with God is going to look different for everyone, a little bit different. Some things will be the same, some things might be a little bit unique. And the last thing is that knowing God, getting to know him better, if you actually push into this and go for it, it's going to be an amazing adventure for you. One of the most impactful and greatest relationships you will ever have. So like whether you're going to be someone who spends time with God in your room in silence, or going for walks talking to God, or singing at the top of your lungs while climbing mountains, admiring God's creation, I hope you find your way this week to spend time with God, because that is the most important adventure.